It happens every time. 24 hours before I leave the house to go anywhere. The panic. The voice inside that says, don't go. Cancel the trip. You're going to look like a fool. They're going to think you're some kind of faker. It feels like things are spiraling out of my grasp and totally out of control. Deep breath. 3, 2, 1, go. We're doing a lot of behind the scenes. Half the chains in the gym over here. Things went to plan. Until they didn't. I took a trip to London, Ohio with my buddy, Juji Mufu, so that I could help film and so that I could go ahead and visit one of the strongest gyms in America. And maybe in even the entire world. We're filming some behind the scenes at the elitefts gym.
You can't hear anything because there's so
Can't
many
hear
chains.
anything because we're moving so many chains around. We've got Sam behind the camera. We've also got Sam behind
Sam
the camera.
Brown.
We've got John. We've got
Yep.
Jacob.
Yep.
We've got everybody here.
We got everybody!
It was an incredible opportunity to meet and greet and work with some of the strongest and brightest people in the entire fitness industry. Like most things in my travel plans, things went to plan. Until they didn't. But as always, I learned an incredible amount of things. And hopefully, you can learn just as much as I did. So the first day, I met up with Juji and Sam, and we headed on over to the elitefts gym. The gym is an unbelievable facility. There are more bars, attachments, gear, racks, weights. There's more stuff in there than you can shake a stick at. And walking in there and actually physically being there was such a head trip for me. I've edited various videos, with people in that gym over the years, but actually standing in that gym was something totally different. We met up with Sam Brown, their director of performance, their cinematographer, Jacob Bobo, and later on, elitefts CEO, Dave Tate. It was awesome meeting all three of them in different ways. But the casual chat would come later. We had a video to film. Now, as usual, Sam, Judy's wife, was on main filming duties. Thank goodness. I was primarily there to capture some extra side footage, for coverage, and to shoot my own stuff. The premise of the first video was to take conjugate style exercises, but make them as ridiculous as possible. A vast oversimplification, but conjugate is it's a training system. And one part of it is that you use bands and chains to make a part of a lift easier or more difficult. It's an entire training system, but that's just one portion that we decided to focus on. First exercise was to be a max effort ring fly with chain using Olympic rings. That is a mouthful. And like usual, half the battle was actually setting up the lift. Setting up for another video stunt. As you can tell, we have half the chains in the gym over here and a pair of rings. Me and Sam Brown and a ton of other people in the gym, we dragged what felt like literally half the chains in the gym over to Juji, and then we put on a bunch of them in different places on him. I was a little concerned that we were putting too much chain on him, but Juji was like, no, it's fine. Put more chains on me, put more chains on me. He's really a good sport about these kind of things. Some of the chains were larger and some of them were smaller. Some of them were clipped together, so the actual weights of them heavy, who knows? In the world of wacky YouTube and Instagram stunt lifting, you're never quite sure how heavy a stunt lift is. Especially when you're moving fast and it's stuff like chains, you're not going to each weigh out each individual chain. That would be totally crazy. So we loaded chains until it seemed heavy enough, and then we got this clip. It looked absolutely crazy, so job well accomplished on that. Then we had the fun part of taking all the chains off of Juji again. I quickly removed them because he was actually kind of buried by some of these chains. Having an extra pair of hands just to do stuff like moving weights around, in situations like this, is actually super useful. So I was glad that I was there to actually help out instead of just standing around and looking at everybody. Another note is that when filming like this, you never quite know when the next clip is going to be, or the next lift, or the next event, so on and so forth. So it always pays to be ready. I did poorly try to film some vlog clips in between all of this. I forgot that I was supposed to be vlogging for this video as well. Basically, we're doing a lot of behind the scenes sort of shots, so you get to see us set up some of the stuff, what we're doing in between it, a lot of heavy breathing and resting between the sets. But that video actually never really came together because there were so many other things that were just going on. The last thing I wanted was to be filming a vlog clip of myself while Juji's getting buried in chains and nobody's helping him. That's just not the vibe, you know what I mean? The second lift that we moved on to was a max chained rope row. I had to be very specific in saying those. I am sure that there is a better name for this exercise than all of these, but we made these exercises up, so we can call them whatever we want. Once again, Juji laid down, and then we covered him with a ton of chains. Everybody there was just super gracious and just letting me film whatever, or hey, do you need help with this, or hey, do you want to film stuff for this? Like it was honestly so mind-blowing that everybody was so nice and accommodating about that. I had a loose plan to kind of vlog in between everything.
I'm gonna stare at myself and not at you guys now.
No,
because
don't
now
look at the lens, John.
Yeah.
Look at the. I'm gonna fold the screen
now
back.
I'm gonna start doing this.
No, that's it. I'm folding the screen back.
But as we moved through the lifting events, I kind of decided that it would be better for me to just not film and get in the way. So we get finished with the rope pull-up section, and we're cleaning up all this chain even more. And then things just go totally off the rails. We spent like what must have been 20, 30 minutes trying to rig up Juji into like a banded suit, basically a harness, so that he could do like a jump that was assisted with bands. But the first harness didn't work. We didn't have enough bands.
Whoa! What? Yeah, I told you it was the boat. It's the.
It was a little bit of an engineering mishap. The first harness we used was a bow tie, but it didn't give us like enough reach, or maybe we didn't have enough bands. That first try didn't really work out. But you can't give up. In the spirit of making silly and ridiculous YouTube videos, you have to be creative. So Sam Brown whips out a truck pull harness, like the same type of like multi-stitched harness that strongmen use to pull airplanes, and decides, yes, this is what we'll use to rig them up. We poorly rigged it together with even more bands and like chain hook attachments and like a bunch more stuff that we basically just hooked onto him in the attempt to make this work. We try the stunt again, and lo and behold, it kind of works. Like Juji's, basically jumping up and down and bouncing up and down. Now, as Juji is flying around in the sky, kind of flying around, Dave Tate, the owner of the gym, the owner of elitefts, comes into the door. Like this wasn't a planned thing. He just happened to come in at this time. And somehow he is wholly unsurprised to see Juji in a truck pull harness hooked up to like 10 different bands and like a chain connector and all this ridiculous stuff. And he doesn't skip a beat. Like he doesn't bat an eye and hits us with this line.
I got it. Come on.
How conjugate is this?
That's conjugate as fuck right there.
Dave's an absolute baller. After the stunt, I had Juji replicate it again for a picture.
Look towards us. Look towards us. All right, I'm gonna move in for a close. Okay.
I'm going somewhere.
Thankfully, this stunt's not too hard to replicate for a picture, but some of the stunts that Juji does definitely would not want to replicate them again. Something like the max chain ring fly that's something that you do once. That's it. You do it once. That's a haul. It's always nice to have that separate like high resolution photo, but you can always take like a short video clip specifically for the purpose of using it for a thumbnail. So Sam has done the vast majority of the recent thumbnails, and she's doing an excellent job, by the way. The rest of the video is some dialogue and essentially just us kind of messing around afterwards, but I learned two things very quickly from that video. Switching between photo and video is super cool, but it's really difficult, especially if you're trying to build skills in both areas at the same time. It's much better to focus on one over the other. For the sake of working with other camera operators as well, it's definitely good to pick one or the other. There are hybrid shooters, of course, like people who do video and photo at a very high level. I am not one of those people yet. I'm an editor first, then a video guy, then a photo guy. So in a case like mine, it's better to focus on one area over the other. You also have to remember to switch up all your settings between photo and video. On the A7 IV, there's just a little thumb dial that definitely makes it way easier than other hybrid cameras. However, I found myself forgetting to flip that dial a couple of times while we were recording. So for you true hybrid professionals, this is probably less of a concern. But if you guys do video and photo, do you ever do them in the same session? Am I alone in this? 2, the second thing that I learned, just help out. I only ended up filming a handful of clips that actually made it into the final edit. Sam is a total badass and knows what she's doing, and the vast majority of those shots, that's what I end up using for pretty much all the videos that we do. But something small that helps the video move along quicker is helping Juji with gear or helping put weights on bars. Like, it's all the small stuff in between all the video that just helps the video go along a little bit faster. It's also good to kind of, stay in the zone, because later on when we start lifting some really heavy weights, if you're spotting that person, you might want to pay attention to, spotting them and making sure that they don't drop hundreds of pounds on themselves. The next day turned out even crazier than the last day. We had a bench press video planned, and typically bench press, if you don't know, bench press is a lift where you just press, you let a bar down, and you press it off your chest. So it's a fairly static event as far as the athlete goes, right? The athlete's obviously pressing stuff off their chest, and it's a difficult lift. But the actual athlete themselves is not really moving around very much, except for, the arms and chest moving the bar. They're not like running around into a million different places. So with that setup in mind, I'd set up my camera, little mini Siriu tripod. I set that up on one of the boxes at a wide angle and basically just left it on there. Once again, Sam handled all of the main up-close filming. The video plan was for Juji to bench a 1 rep max, or as much as possible on the bench. Then, using some of the supportive equipment that's at elitefts, he would try to bench another PR. And he would do this using something called a bench shirt. Now, also a vast oversimplification, but essentially a bench shirt is a multi-ply or multi-layered shirt made of different kinds of fabrics. It essentially acts as a stretchy slingshot that allows you to lift more on certain lifts. Now, we always have fun filming fitness stuff, of course, but there is a certain element of danger when you're handling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, especially in the case of a bench press where you have hundreds of pounds precariously perched over your chest/neck/head. When you are handling all these hundreds and hundreds of pounds, you have to pay attention. Now, keep in mind, Juji had only benched 3 times in the last year. The first one was actually with me when his new gym was just being built.
First unofficial workout. The first unofficial workout in the new gym, because we're going to have a second and a third unofficial workout too. We are trying out the new Ghost Strong competition bench. Come on. There we go.
The second time, well, I don't really know if it's a max, but the second time is he decided to see how much he could do 3 plates 4, I think, and he just wanted to do max reps, but then he had to stop because a truck with Juji pants had arrived. So he had to go unload those. And then the third one was lifting at the hybrid meet. And in between all of this, there was pretty much 0 bench press training. Juji was getting ready for a show, a bodybuilding show, for the majority of the year, and so he'd been working on machines and dumbbells and stuff, but not really a lot of flat bar bench. So the perfect time to try to do a personal record, right? So Dave and his crew masterfully handled Juji, right? He goes for his max attempt. He's going to go do 425, a personal record for him. Dave hands off the weight, and then Juji absolutely kills it, absolutely crushes it. Not a problem. You could feel a rush of just excitement and maybe some relief in the room. The 425 felt great, so why not go for 450? For reference, tacking on 25 pounds to a max lift is something that could take a person months, if not years, to do. This was a pretty crazy attempt. In between attempts, of course, lots of drinking, lots of liquids, snacks if you have them available, and lots of mental preparation actually goes on. You really have to be in the zone to make sure you're hitting all the right cues to make sure that you can lift the weight. So I helped out Juji with pulling on sleeves and helping with weights and small stuff like that. But essentially, I was just trying to stay out of the way. I already had the wide angle shot going on, and Sam was doing all the up close filming and all the main A-roll filming, so I didn't really need to get anybody's face with the camera or anything like that. When someone is hoisting the weight of a full-grown silverback gorilla over their head, the last thing I'm thinking is, damn, I should be recording a funny YouTube video. As a small aside on being helpful though, Sam always does a great job with this stuff. Pretty much always hits all the pivotal moments and the important parts of every single video. And almost always will verbally say the weights or say it at some point in the clip so that when I'm going through the edit, I'll know what weights to actually put without having to use my super tunnel vision to guess what weight's on the bar. I'm not always there in person when they're filming, so it is super helpful to have some kind of weight reference. because we always label the weights that we put on because it gives people an idea of how much, relative weight is being lifted. But not having the confirmation of those weights is very confusing. I have a pretty good idea of what a 45-pound plate looks like and what a 25-pound plate looks like. But sometimes those 10s and 5s, they look the same from the side, okay? But it's small things to give context to a heavy lift. So 450 pounds gets loaded on the bar and everybody gets ready. Juji hits some ammonia and the room goes silent. Dave hands off the weight and it's slowly lowered. The first half gets absolutely blasted up and then it just starts to stutter a little bit. Like maybe it's not in the cards today. But Juji just fights it and fights it and fights it until it literally looks like his eyeballs are like going to pop out of his head. Dave calls it good, racks it, and hits us with this gold statement.
That's the closest I've ever been to not touching it.
The man is just filled with one-liners. Absolutely mad, but Juji hits a 30-pound PR. After not training it for over a year, completely bonkers. Now the next part of the video focused on using a bench shirt, basically the assistive equipment that I talked about earlier. A specialized piece of powerlifting gear. But before that, Sam Brown helps Juji kind of shake out his shoulder with like this stretch, like to help out like his lat and shoulder. There was like a little light coming in from the window, and I was like, yeah, this might be a good time to take a picture. So I took a picture of that. So we go on to the gear portion of the video. So the TLDR of powerlifting, essentially athletes compete in the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, and they try to lift as much weight as possible. The highest total out of those three in each respective weight class wins. A separate division called geared lifting essentially existed so that people could use gear to lift even more weights. But the gear, basically suits and wraps and so on, are a skill within themselves. It's not necessarily the strongest athlete that wins. It's the athlete that gets the highest total. For instance, a tennis player. They may not be the absolute strongest or the absolute fastest player, but if they know how to use a racket super well, they have an advantage. So that out of the way, now this lift was done with an assistive band. Essentially, it's like a cut down version of the bench shirt, if that makes sense. Not as intense as the full bench shirt, but a stepping stone. The weight comes down and the weight comes up. A relatively easy lift. Now you might have seen me using a soft 3 board, or as Dave calls it, the man pon. Man's the king of one-liners. Now boards help reduce the distance that it takes to reach the chest essentially in a bench press. It trains a partial range of motion so that you can become stronger in certain parts of the lift. The soft 3 board basically gives you like a physical sight, like actual visual representation of how far down you're going. Once again, very small job, but something that I needed my hands free for because I needed to move the board back and forth. So definitely not the time to be fucking around with camera gear. Then we moved on to the actual bench suit, and I gotta tell you, this thing is crazy. Imagine sewing together like 3 pairs of blue jeans and then sewing together a super ultra stretchy elastic band in between all 3 of them. That's how crazy stiff it was. Now, even with that extra assistance, it's still up to the athlete to stabilize the weight. The bench shirt seems to help massively with like the first half of the lift. So 500 pounds gets loaded, and once again, Juju just absolutely blasts it up. After getting it off the chest, he struggled a little bit, but still managed to finish the lift. Finding that specific groove is really, really hard for a bench shirt, where if your elbows come up or down just a little bit, like if you're in a weird spot, you're gonna miss the lift. But Juju doing 500 pounds on the bench press for his first time lifting geared is actually kind of crazy. Just trying to stuff Juju into the suit was half the battle. You see a lot of times these equipped lifters have like one or two other people to help them. Essentially, they lift on a team. But basically, everybody in that small group helps each other get into the gear. They spot for each other. They hand off weight for each other. They basically, they help each other out. But it can be a lengthy process. It's almost kind of like putting a knight into armor. And of course, in between all this stuff, there are plenty of conversations that go on. It's those in-between conversations matter just as much as the actual lifting parts of the video. Of course, the heavy lifting is totally hype, right? It's very, very exciting. But especially for our style, it's essentially our goal to make a viewer feel like they're actually there with us, like they're experiencing the same thing with us. And to that point, the actual majority of the videos ends up being dialogue. Almost all the videos that we do are loosely scripted at best, and so capturing and editing the best parts of those conversations is how we try to make a compelling video. That's why I love editing and creating Juji movie videos and my own videos. I want to tell an awesome story, and at the same time, I want to help other people tell awesome stories as well. All right, so the final weight of 530 pounds gets loaded. Just look at how crazy the bar actually looks with all the weight on it. A short breath later, and the handoff comes nice and slow. Juji settles the weight and then blasts it off his chest. A little bit of struggle at the top, and then again, finishes it, not a problem. That almost looked too easy. Everyone had a good celebration after that. And then Juji decided to call it there. Sure, maybe could have lifted a few more pounds, but sometimes you have to know where to call it. The Arnold Sports Festival was the very next day, so there was already a lot on the plate. When your schedule is super busy, you gotta know when to rein it in a little bit. And besides that, getting 3 PRs in one day is a pretty big accomplishment already. So we wrapped up the lifting and put all the weights away, and we kind of broke off into our little groups to talk about stuff. With Sam Brown, I talked about video content and back rehab, of all things, because a few years ago, I broke my back. It was spinal.
Your back is broken. What, a vertebrae or what portion? Spinal.
It's gotten sort of better since then. But Sam Brown essentially ran me through a ton of different exercises and really helped me out. So I was super stoked about that. And everybody just had incredibly interesting things to say. Dave's whole team is filled with top tier talent. And having the opportunity to talk with them and share ideas was, I mean, it's irreplaceable. It really made the whole trip worth it. Even now, I can scarcely believe, after cutting all this video over the years of the elitefts gym and all the athletes that are in it, that I ended up in that place with those people. It was really an awesome experience. And now, 3 quick things that I definitely should have taken more note of, and so that I'll know for next time, and so that you'll know for next time. Film more vertical. When you're working, especially with multiple other people who are filming at the same time, and you don't want to be capturing all the same angles, all the same things, you can just turn your camera up and you can film specifically vertical, which is much easier than filming in 4K and like punching in post. Like you just have the video ready to go in that format. And it's a lot easier than trying to get the same angles or different angles than everybody. Basically, you just don't get in the way as much. 2, work out my own personal recording plan. This is a little hard as an introverted person, but I never want to get in the way of other people or anything like that. And I don't want to feel like I'm like imposing on people to try to squeeze content from them. That's just not my style. But if I don't make some kind of plan and I don't have some foresight about what I'm going to do or what I'm going to record when I go to these places, it'll turn out like this, where I have a bunch of sort of half-baked clips that just never really come into actualization for videos. So make a recording plan, stick to the recording plan. And 3, pack more food and liquids and actually eat and drink them. On the second day, it must have been like 3 or 4 o'clock, and then I realized I had basically only eaten breakfast, and I was ravenously hungry, but I haven't even thought about it because I've been talking to everybody about videos and all that stuff. But especially while you're traveling, you got to take care of yourself. So pack food and liquid and actually eat and drink it. Your body will thank you. You will feel so much better. You'll have so much more energy to do things. Just eat the food and drink the drinks. Now, this was totally an incredible experience, and I definitely learned a lot from this one. And overall, felt a lot more ready to help and record this time than I did the first time when we were with Martins and Romark and everyone else, which was a complete separate disaster, but also really fun time.